we met in college. We dated for 2 years, we got married, and then shortly after we got pregnant. But we were still in college, right? And the foolish, uninformed person that I was like, we can't afford a kid right now. We're still trying to get through college. There's no way we can have a kid. And I convinced her, despite her objections for the most part, to get an abortion. Right? Um, Thinking back on it now, I'm horribly ashamed about that. Right? But in the moment, I was like, this is the best. This is the best for us. This is how we should go about it. So that's what I mean by foolish. I thought I was in charge, right? And I should be the person making all the decisions.
We never met our baby, but
foolishness on my part, when I think about that, the why I was foolish is I believe that I was king of my life, that I was in control of everything, which led me to foolishly depend upon solely myself to make the right decisions. We got very disconnected at some point in our marriage where we weren't even really able to talk to each other properly without it turning into an argument or yelling. So we had actually been to counseling for a while, and I still thought that I was right in everything I did because I believed in the world's view of infidelity, which is physical, right? I didn't adhere to the Catholic view, which is, if it happened in your mind, it happened, regardless. And so it took a lot of time forming my conscience to truly understand that. So we were very seriously thinking about getting divorced. We even announced it to our family, right? Like, hey, we're going to get divorced because this just isn't working out.
and we moved out.
Yeah.
We were no longer living together. So it was pretty serious. I'm the oldest, and my parents are very, especially my dad, very traditional Hispanic. So he wanted his first child to be a boy. And because I was a girl, in my household, it's always like, well, no, you can't go help me with the cars because you're a girl. You can't do that. We girls just don't do that. That's what I mean by traditional. And so I grew up always being the loudest, and I don't take no for an answer very well, and being very stubborn. So when Kenny would aggravate those parts in me and push those buttons when he would do those things. And it was a battle of wills of who's right. And on both parts, I think it was we both were set in our ways and would die on a hill of I'm right. And there was no marriage per se. There was, in the sense that it was either my way or the highway, or his way and the highway. There was no in between for that, for the longest. And I think so I would say foolish on both parts, but that's what caused or triggered a lot of the problems, because it was just a marriage between us two, if you can call it that, and God was nowhere to be found.
I think it was the divorce, the actual thinking about divorce, right? Sitting alone at home and not having her around to just talk to really caused me to think about it. And then when we agreed to give it another try, one of her stipulations was you have to become Catholic. So I think that was the real turning point.
Good job.
I had tried everything else at this point. It was the last card I had.
during my RCIA process, instead of being able to be baptized on Easter, we get a message, I want to say probably in April. They're like, hey, we have no idea when we're going to be able to baptize you, right? All the people in RCIA, we're trying to figure out how we're going to do that with COVID kind of hitting really hard. So we're going to have to figure that out. Easter comes along, we still have no idea. And they're like, okay, we figured it out. They've kind of relaxed in May, so we can do it on Pentecost Sunday instead. So I got baptized on Pentecost Sunday. We get to New York. We were able to afford a nice little home there. And I want to say about a year in, we get pregnant. Also, in that year, we find out that she has a septated uterus, which means that she kind of has a wall in the middle of her uterus, which means that the baby only has half the space to grow, which kind of makes all of her pregnancies high risk. We did not know at the time when we got pregnant. We get pregnant, we go through it. She ends up having complications around week, what was it, like 28, week 30, something like that, right? We rush to the hospital because she's in premature labor. She's dilated to 4 centimeters, something like that. And they give her a cocktail of medicines to make sure that she doesn't dilate anymore and they stop labor. And this is the scary bit. When you're in the hospital and they do that, they also have the NICU nurse or doctor come in and they explain all the things that could possibly happen to your baby if they come out early. And this is our first child, right? And we're sitting there. She's kind of half drugged, so she doesn't quite remember the entire conversation. And I'm sitting, I'm like, well, that's really scary, because they talk about being in the incubator or whether or not the brain has developed enough to even breathe properly. Those kinds of things, and it's super scary. We're in the hospital for about 2 to 3 weeks. I felt like we honestly lived at the hospital. Luckily, we make it to about 36 weeks, which is just a month before due, actually to the day. We wake up, it's 4, 5 in the morning, maybe 6, and she goes, I think my water broke, right? Like we need to go to the hospital. So we rush to the hospital, and it's like, oh yeah, you're gonna have a baby today. No ifs, ands, buts about it. And it's gonna have to be a C-section. So we have Violet that day, within maybe an hour of getting to the hospital. But because she is a preemie, all premature babies get taken by the NICU, at least for observation. But she comes out crying, strong, so they take her for observation, and we get her back to us the very next day. Well, actually the same day, 8 hours, which is really cool. And so we pack up our bags for a second time and move across the country. And this time we move pregnant, because at this point she is pregnant with Max. Our house, unfortunately, hasn't closed on the sale yet. So we're living at the Town Place Suites or something like that at the Marriott downtown Olympia. Easter's rolling around. We haven't gone to Mass in a while. We haven't gone to confession because we're trying to figure out how to live in a hotel room with a toddler while we're both working. And we go, oh, well, there's a church right down the road from the hotel. Why don't we go there to St. Mike's? And the first time we enter St. Mike's, we're like, what is going on with this church? This is amazing. So we get there, we have Mass. We're like, this is a great church. We should come to Mass more often now, because now we know where we're going. We're kind of figuring out what's going on. And then 2 weeks later, Max decides that he's not staying inside, and we're rushing ourselves to the hospital. Max was supposed to come September 18th. It is July 22nd. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's July 22nd or 21st. I can't remember how many days we stayed in the hospital before he came. But we're rushing from Shelton down to St. Peter's because Max is 2 months early at this point. And we get there and
My water broke.
yeah, her water broke. We drive down to St. Pete's. St. Pete's is like, okay, let's see what we can do. Your baby is just before 32 weeks. So that's 32 weeks is when St. Peter's NICU will take a baby in. So he was 31 and 5 days, 31 and 4 days, something like that. And so they're like, we're transferring you over to Tacoma General. So she gets in the ambulance to go to Tacoma General. I follow in my car. They're able to stabilize her. Like, we're going to try to keep the baby in you for as long as possible. Every day at this point makes a difference. We'll see what we can do. And it's like, well, you're not going home. You're staying here. So we have to figure that out. I want to say the very next night, Max decides, yeah, we're coming.
Father John Paul had just come over that morning to
Yes,
bring
that's right.
Eucharist.
Father John Paul came over just that morning to give us confession and Eucharist, right? Because we're like, we can't make it to church, obviously, for extenuating circumstances. So he comes out, gives us confession. We have the Eucharist. And then that night, Max is born. He is 31
6.
and 6. 31 weeks, 6 days. And he comes out crying, so healthy set of lungs. They bring him to the NICU, as they do. We're used to that. We're like, okay, he's going to go to the NICU for some amount of time because we know that he has to go. We're very blessed because if we had had Max in New York, we don't know if he would have come as early or been on time. But if he had came early, he would have been in the NICU and we would have only been able to come visit during business hours, basically. But we ended up here, and we ended up going to Tacoma General, where they had private rooms where we were able to sleep, right? And it just was great. Actually, I want to say we got Father John Paul to come in like the next day, maybe 2 days afterwards, to have him baptized. So that was awesome. And actually, Father John Paul did a baptism and confirmation because he looked at the rules and found that if there's I forget the terminology, but basically a threat of life not continuing, that he could also do an emergency confirmation as well. Yep. And if you were to look at Max, you would not even believe that he was a premature baby now. I would say our marriage is in the best position it's been since we've been married. We actually, as part of marriage counseling, we made a marriage mission statement, what our marriage is meant to be, or what we idealize it to be, and we use it as a prayer, as much as we remember every day,
Our assignment was to sit together and essentially come up with a mission statement, a goal and values that you want your marriage to have, with the idea of if you're not looking at where you're going as a marriage and agree to it, then it's no different than when you're gardening and just letting the weeds take over because you don't know where you're going.
Our mission statement is a marriage that is understanding, loving, caring, respectful, kind, compassionate, and serving. We will provide a safe space to discuss our hopes, dreams, troubles, worries, cares, and concerns. In place of judgment and pride, we will practice humility, compassion, and prayer for each other. Family prayer will be a priority. Our marriage will be one where we look for opportunities in everyday life to bring joy to each other. Our marriage will prioritize God and family. We will strive to be the old couple that holds hands, and our children will tell us to get a room. We will illustrate to our children what a marriage in Christ is meant to be, and therefore teach them the real fairy tale. It will be caring physically, emotionally, spiritually, and financially. Above all, our marriage will have God at the center and exemplify His love and passion. Instead of my way or their highway, or two highways, her highway and my highway, we come together to try to find the one highway so that we can travel together.
As a family.
As a family, yes.
Yeah.
As the kids get older, we're starting to ask them what they want as well.
Well, but we also want to lay down their highway because they'll eventually have to do what we're doing, right? So.
Is your what you've learned through all of this? Are you consciously
Yeah.
trying to impart? How much does that affect how you?
all,
A lot.
100%. So the
Everything, yeah.
marriage statement, we do, it's a family prayer. If we have what we call family huddle time. So on Sundays, we will all sit down and discuss our schedule, and they contribute on the activities that they want to do, so that we're all as a family unit working towards the same goals. There's very few discussions that we have behind closed doors and not in front of the kids. And then the kids will ask questions about what we're talking about. We're very open with them on the sense of mom and dad are having a adult conversation because we need to figure out where we need to spend our money so we're good stewards of it, or et cetera, et cetera. And if we do end up raising our voices, we make it a point to apologize to each other in front of the kids, like saying, look, we failed. We're human. But there's a follow-up to that. And our kids hold us accountable too. We have good choices and bad choices because that was easier to teach them. These are the house rules. They're up on our wall, and for a while we reviewed them every day. Now our toddler knows them, but she'll call you out around the house, hey, and she'll take you to the wall and say, you're not following the rules.
That
And
was
then
a
she'll
bad
go
choice.
put you on a naughty step and say, you need to sit here for 2 minutes and think about what you've done. So, yeah. Father Jim one time told me at confession, because usually it's the same sins every week or every 2 weeks that I go to confession. I know it's awful. And usually it's for something that Kenny has done or my kids have done. And I don't remember why we were fighting, but it was something nonsensical. And I essentially went into the confessional, outraged and, can you believe, almost? And Father Jim, as he is, he has a giant smile as I'm like, thunderstorms coming out of my head. And then at the end of my confession, he just goes, yeah, being a mom and a wife is hard. And for your penance, I want you to go and sit at the cross for a few minutes and look at it. And that is the greatest example of love we had. And I was like, okay, Father, I will do as you say, but that's not I was kind of half expecting for you to tell me that I was right, but okay. But after I did it, what he said and reflecting, he's right. One, it was not about me. Jesus, the King of Kings himself, got spat on, this and that, and all of that in a way figuratively happens in your marriage. And then we get defensive about it and how dare he? But we're called to die for each other in the marriage, no matter what, and to get the other person to a higher place in heaven. And that's tough work and not an easy task. Yeah. For Christ is your King, and what that means to us is for him to be always at the center, not just on Sundays. And so we really try to incorporate that into everything we do every day, into our jobs, with our children. And it takes a lot of work.